In a galaxy ruled by gods, where peace has been bought with the blood of countless battles, the Celestial Empire prided itself on its unshakable dominion. They were the architects of order, the creators of serenity, and yet, in the vastness of the cosmos, they overlooked one crucial truth. Not all worlds were meant to be tamed, and not all species were meant to bow when their quantum scanning technology first found Earth. The Empire saw only a primitive world teeming with creatures struggling to survive on a brutal, unforgiving planet. They dismissed it as insignificant, a fleeting spark in a universe of far greater wonders. Yet, beneath the surface of this seemingly chaotic world lay something far more dangerous than any threat the Empire had ever faced. The humans, a species forged in the fire of their own destruction, had learned the art of survival, not from their might, but from their unyielding will to live. They thrived where others would perish, and when the gods arrived to test them, they would learn that some spirits cannot be broken, and so the Celestial Empire, confident in their superiority, made a fatal mistake. They underestimated the strength of humanity, and they would soon discover, far too late, that true power does not lie in technology or dominance. It lies in the heart of those who refuse to surrender. When gods meet mortals, the quantum resonance chamber hummed with otherworldly energy as Emperor Zephyros studied the holographic display floating before his crystalline throne. The Celestial Empire had ruled the galaxy for over 10,000 years, their advanced technology and wisdom guiding countless civilizations from barbarism to enlightenment. Today, another primitive world had appeared on their sensors, and the Emperor felt the familiar mixture of duty and boredom that came with such discoveries. "What do we know about this system?" Zephyros asked, his voice carrying the melodic tones that marked his species as the galaxy's most evolved beings. His advisor, Chancellor Vex, materialized beside him in a shimmer of light. "The system is designated Sol 3, my lord. A small yellow star with several planets. The third planet shows signs of primitive civilization," Vex reported, manipulating the hologram to zoom in on Earth. "Initial scans suggest a species in the early stages of technological development. They call themselves humans." Emperor Zephyros leaned forward, his luminescent eyes studying the swirling blue and green world. "Atmospheric composition? Highly toxic, my lord. 21% oxygen, which would be lethal to most civilized species. The surface pressure and temperature fluctuate wildly. There are frequent storms, seismic activity, and radiation exposure from their star. By all accounts, it should be classified as a death world. Yet life exists there," the Emperor mused. "How fascinating. What of their society?" Chancellor Vex's expression grew puzzled. "That's where it becomes interesting, my lord. Despite their primitive technology, they show remarkable signs of creativity and cooperation. They've built structures that dwarf even some of our minor installations. Their mathematical and artistic achievements are surprisingly sophisticated." The Emperor stood, his robes flowing like liquid starlight. "Prepare an expedition. Send Admiral Lyra with a standard uplift fleet. These humans sound like they could benefit from our guidance." 3 days later, Admiral Lyra stood on the bridge of the flagship Eternal Dawn, watching the blue marble of Earth grow larger in the viewport. She was young by celestial standards, only 3 centuries old, but her dedication to the Empire's mission of galactic enlightenment was absolute. Around her, the bridge crew prepared for what they expected to be a routine first contact. "All stations report ready, Admiral," her tactical officer announced. "Shall we begin the standard observation protocol?" "Proceed," Lyra commanded. "Begin with population centers. Let's see how these humans live." The first images that came back left the entire bridge crew speechless. The humans weren't living in the pristine, environmentally controlled cities that marked all civilized worlds. Instead, they had built massive structures of stone, metal, and glass that seemed to challenge their very environment. Towers reached toward the sky despite frequent storms. Bridges spanned impossible distances over turbulent waters. Most shocking of all, the humans seemed to be thriving in conditions that would kill a celestial in minutes. Admiral, the science officer called out, his voice trembling. I am detecting massive population centers in regions with extreme temperature variations. Some humans are living in areas where the temperature drops below the freezing point of water. That's impossible, Lyra replied. No intelligent species can survive in such conditions. Ma'am, I'm also detecting human settlements in regions with active seismic activity. They've built cities literally on top of geological fault lines. Admiral, Lyra felt something she hadn't experienced in decades. Confusion. Show me their physical structure. Perhaps they've evolved some form of environmental protection. The biological scans revealed something even more disturbing. Humans weren't just surviving in these harsh conditions. They were completely unprotected. Their skin was thin, their bones relatively fragile compared to galactic standards. They had no natural armor, no environmental shielding, no obvious adaptations for survival in such a hostile world. How are they alive? Lyra whispered that the answer came from an unexpected source. While monitoring human communications, the translation computers had been working overtime to decode their languages. What they found challenged everything the Celestial Empire believed about civilized behavior. Admiral, the communications officer, reported, I've been analyzing their information networks. They share something they call news. It's reports of current events across their planet. Show me. The holographic display filled with images that made the celestial crew gasp in horror and amazement. Humans running into burning buildings to save strangers. Medical personnel working without sleep for days during emergencies. Ordinary citizens forming human chains to rescue others from floods. Volunteers traveling across continents to help disaster victims. They'd never met. It wasn't just the heroism that shocked them. It was the disasters themselves. These humans faced catastrophes on a daily basis that would have wiped out most civilized worlds. Hurricanes with winds that could level cities. Earthquakes that split the ground open. Volcanic eruptions that blocked out the sun. Forest fires that consumed areas larger than some planets' total landmass. They're not just surviving, the science officer said in awe. They're fighting back against their own planet every single day. Admiral Lyra studied the data, her mind struggling to process what she was seeing. What about their military capabilities? Surely they must have advanced weapons to defend against such threats. The tactical analysis revealed something even more remarkable. Human military technology was primitive by galactic standards, but their tactics and organization were unlike anything in the Celestial database. They fought with a combination of strategic thinking and desperate creativity that no civilized species had ever needed to develop. Ma'am, the tactical officer reported, their military history is ... extensive. They've been fighting wars continuously for their entire recorded history. Against whom? What external threats have they faced? That's just it, Admiral. They've been fighting each other. The revelation hit the bridge like a physical blow. These humans, living on a world that would kill most species, had spent their entire existence fighting not just their environment, but each other. Yet somehow, they had not only survived, but flourished. I need to understand this better, Admiral. Lyra said, show me one of their population centers. Let's observe how they actually live. The cameras focused on a city called New York. What they saw defied all logic. Millions of humans packed together in towering structures, moving through the streets with purpose and energy. Despite the crowded conditions, despite the environmental hazards, despite the constant stress that such living conditions should create, the humans seemed ... content. Children played in parks surrounded by structures that reached toward the sky. Adults gathered in groups, sharing food and laughter. Elderly humans sat on benches, watching the world go by with expressions of peace and satisfaction. They're happy, the science officer said in wonder. Living in conditions that would drive most species to madness, and they're actually happy. Admiral Lyra leaned back in her command chair, her mind reeling. The Celestial Empire had encountered thousands of species across the galaxy. They had seen civilizations that had mastered space travel, species that had achieved perfect harmony with their environments, cultures that had eliminated war and suffering from their worlds. But they had never encountered anything like humanity. Cancel. The uplift protocols, she commanded suddenly. Ma'am? Her second in command asked. I said cancel them. We're not dealing with a primitive species that needs our guidance. We're dealing with something else entirely. She paused, studying the images of humans going about their daily lives in conditions that would terrify most galactic species. These humans haven't just adapted to their world. They've conquered it. Every single day. They face challenges that would destroy civilized species, and they don't just survive, they thrive. The bridge fell silent as the implications sank in. The Celestial Empire had built their civilization on the principle of avoiding conflict, of creating perfect, controlled environments where their people could live in peace and harmony. They had seen this as the ultimate achievement of civilization. But watching these humans, Admiral Lyra began to wonder if they had missed something fundamental about what it meant to be truly alive. Ma'am, the communications officer interrupted her. Thoughts. I'm receiving a transmission from the planet's surface. From whom? It appears to be from one of their space agencies. They're welcoming us to their solar system. Admiral Lyra blinked in surprise. They know we're here? Yes, ma'am. Their message says they've been tracking our ships for the past 2 days. They're inviting us to establish diplomatic contact. The Admiral felt a chill run through her crystalline form. Not only had these humans survived on a death world, not only had they thrived in conditions that would kill most species, but they had also detected the presence of the most advanced fleet in the galaxy without any apparent difficulty. What else does the message say? They're asking if we need any assistance, ma'am. They want to know if our ships require supplies or repairs. For the first time in her 3-century life, Admiral Lyra experienced something that the Celestial Empire had bred out of their species millennia ago. Fear. Not fear of the humans themselves, but fear of what they represented. These weren't primitive beings who needed guidance. They were something entirely new in the galaxy's history. They were survivors who had turned survival into an art form. Trial by fire Emperor Zephyros paced the length of his crystal chamber. Admiral Lyra's report playing for the 3rd time on the holographic display. The images of human resilience and ingenuity filled the space around him, each scene more impossible than the last. Children playing in snow that would freeze a celestial solid. Workers repairing damage from earthquakes that would have evacuated entire galactic sectors. Humans diving into turbulent waters to save strangers, risking their own lives without hesitation. This makes no sense, he muttered to Chancellor Vex. No species develops this way. Intelligence evolves to avoid danger, not to embrace it. Perhaps, my lord, we should test their capabilities more thoroughly, Vex suggested. A controlled experiment to understand the true extent of their resilience. The Emperor paused, considering. What do you propose? Their planet is already volatile. We could enhance certain natural processes, create scenarios that would force them to demonstrate their limits. If they truly are as remarkable as Admiral Lyra's report suggests, they will find a way to overcome any challenge. And if they fail, then we will know they are not as special as they appear, and we can proceed with standard uplift protocols. Emperor. Zephyros nodded slowly. Very well, but we observe only. No direct intervention. I want to see what these humans do when faced with impossible odds. The plan was implemented with surgical precision. Using gravitational manipulation technology, the Celestial Fleet triggered a massive earthquake along what humans called the Pacific Ring of Fire. The resulting tsunamis and seismic activity affected millions of humans across multiple continents. By all calculations, it should have been a civilization-ending disaster. Admiral Lyra watched from orbit as the catastrophe unfolded. Her orders clear. Observe and record everything. What she witnessed over the next 72 hours would change her, understanding of life itself. The first wave hit the Japanese coastline at dawn. Cities that had stood for centuries were swept away in minutes. But instead of chaos and despair, the humans responded with something the Celestials had never seen: immediate, coordinated action without central command. "Look at this," the science officer called out, highlighting sections of the affected area. "They're not fleeing. They're organizing." Rescue teams appeared as if from nowhere, pulling survivors from the wreckage. Medical personnel set up treatment centers in the ruins of hospitals. Engineers worked around the clock to restore power and communications. But it wasn't just the professionals who amazed the watching Celestials. Ordinary humans, shopkeepers, students, retirees, dropped everything to help. They opened their homes to strangers. They shared their food with people they'd never met. They formed human chains to pass supplies across impossible terrain. Children helped adults, and adults risked their lives for children who weren't even their own. "They're treating the disaster as if it's a war," the tactical officer observed. "But they're not fighting each other. They're fighting the disaster itself." Admiral Lyra leaned forward, studying the coordination patterns. "No, it's more than that. They're fighting for each other." The most remarkable scenes came from the hardest hit areas. In one coastal town, humans had formed a living bridge across a collapsed roadway, passing injured survivors from person to reach medical aid. In another location, a group of humans had spent 18 hours digging through rubble with their bare hands to save a family trapped beneath. "Ma'am," the communications officer reported, "I'm intercepting thousands of messages between the humans. They're coordinating rescue efforts across the entire planet." "Show me." The holographic display filled with a web of communications. Social media posts sharing information about missing persons. Scientific organizations sharing real-time data about aftershocks and weather patterns. Governments coordinating international aid. Private citizens organizing supply drives and transportation networks. But it was the personal messages that struck the Celestial crew most deeply. Humans reaching out to complete strangers, offering help, comfort, and hope. Messages of love and determination that crossed continents and cultures. People sharing their own stories of survival to encourage others who were still trapped. "They're not just surviving," Admiral Lyra said quietly. "They're inspiring each other to survive." The innovation that emerged from desperation amazed the watching aliens. Human engineers created makeshift bridges from wreckage. Doctors performed surgery using improvised tools and car headlights. Communication specialists established networks using everything from ham radios to messenger pigeons. Every challenge met with creativity and determination. One scene particularly captured the Admiral's attention. A human doctor named Sarah Chen had established a medical station in what remained of a school building. She had been working for 36 hours straight, treating injuries with supplies that ran out hours ago. When Admiral Lyra watched her, used torn clothing to make bandages and desk lamps to provide light for surgery, she felt something she had never experienced: admiration for a primitive species. "She should be exhausted," the medical officer observed. "Her body should have shut down hours ago." "Look at her eyes," Admiral Lyra replied. "She's not running on physical strength anymore. She's running on something else." That something else became clear when a new wave of injured humans arrived at Dr. Chun's makeshift hospital. Instead of turning them away, she began training uninjured survivors to assist her. Within hours, she had created a functioning medical team from people who had never received formal training. "How is this possible?" the science officer asked. "They're performing complex medical procedures with no equipment, no training, no resources. They're teaching each other," Admiral Lyra realized. "In the middle of a disaster, they're sharing knowledge to save lives." The pattern repeated across the disaster zone. Humans with specialized knowledge immediately began teaching others. Engineers showed civilians how to assess structural damage. Firefighters trained volunteers in search and rescue techniques. Even children were learning and contributing, carrying supplies and comforting adults who had lost everything. But the most astounding discovery came on the second day. The celestial sensors detected something impossible. Humans were actually improving their disaster response in real time. Each rescue was more efficient than the last. Each medical station was better organized. Each engineering solution was more creative. They're not just adapting, Admiral Lyra whispered. They're evolving right in front of us. The final test came when aftershocks triggered a new series of landslides, threatening the largest refugee camp. Thousands of humans were trapped with no way to escape and no time to organize an evacuation. By every calculation, it should have been a massacre. Instead, the humans did something that broke every model in the celestial database. They didn't run. They didn't panic. They didn't wait for rescue. They fought back. Using debris from the original disaster, they built barriers to redirect the landslide. Working in perfect coordination without any central command, they created an engineering marvel in under 2 hours. When the landslide hit, it flowed around their improvised defenses like water around a stone. Not a single human life was lost. Admiral Lyra stood in stunned silence as the reports came in. The Celestial Empire had thrown what should have been a civilization-ending disaster at these humans, and they had not only survived, but grown stronger. Their response time improved with each challenge. Their coordination became more efficient. Their innovations became more sophisticated. Nam, the communications officer, called out. I'm receiving another transmission from the surface. What do they say? They single quotes read ... They're thanking us. Thanking us? Yes, ma'am. They believe we're here to help with the disaster. They want to know if we have any injured crew members who need medical attention. Admiral Lyra felt something shatter in her worldview. The Celestial Empire had just tested these humans with a catastrophe that would have destroyed any civilized world. And their response was to offer help to the very beings who had caused their suffering. Ma'am, the science officer added quietly, there's something else. I've been analyzing their response patterns, and I don't think this was unusual for them. What do you mean? According to their historical records, they respond this way to every disaster. Every single time their world tries to kill them, they fight back together. It's not just their nature, Mom. It's their way of life. Admiral Lyra closed her eyes, finally understanding what they had discovered. The Celestial Empire had spent millennia creating perfect worlds where their people could live in peace and safety. They had eliminated war, disease, natural disasters, and every form of struggle from their existence. But in doing so, they had also eliminated the very challenges that had forged humanity into something extraordinary. These humans hadn't just survived on the death world, they had been perfected by it. Every disaster had made them stronger. Every challenge had made them more innovative. Every crisis had brought them closer together. They weren't a primitive species that needed guidance. They were a force of nature that had learned to work in harmony with itself. And now, the Celestial Empire was about to learn why that mattered. Part 3, The Price of Peace. The emergency council session convened in the deepest chambers of the Celestial capital ship, far from the curious eyes of the human world below. Emperor Zephyros stood before the assembled admirals and ministers, his luminescent form dimmed with worry. Admiral Lyra's reports had shaken the foundation of everything they believed about civilization. But there was a more pressing concern that demanded immediate attention. Show them, the Emperor commanded. The chamber filled with a holographic display of the galaxy's outer rim. What should have been empty space was instead filled with something that made even the most seasoned military officers step back in horror. A writhing mass of darkness moved between the stars, consuming everything in its path. The Void Swarm has returned, Chancellor Vex announced, his melodic voice heavy with dread. Our deep space sensors detected them 3 days ago. They're moving toward the core systems at unprecedented speed. Admiral Koren, the fleet's most experienced commander, studied the readings with growing alarm. How many ships? That's just it, Vex replied. They're not ships. Our analysis suggests there's some form of living entity. Billions of them, possibly trillions. moving in perfect coordination. Emperor Zephyros gestured, and the display zoomed in on the leading edge of the swarm. What they saw defied description. Creatures of living shadow that seemed to absorb light itself, moving through the vacuum of space as easily as swimming through water. "We've encountered them before," the Emperor said quietly. 7,000. Years ago, during the early days of our empire, they came from the void between galaxies, consuming everything in their path. It took the combined might of 50 civilizations to drive them back. "But, my lord," Admiral Lyra interjected, "those civilizations no longer exist. The Corvini achieved perfect peace and disbanded their military 3 millennia ago. The Zentari transcended physical form. The Malari chose isolation on their paradise. Worlds, we're the only major military power left in the galaxy, and we haven't fought a real war in over 4,000 years." The uncomfortable truth settled over the council like a shroud. The Celestial Empire had indeed achieved perfect peace, but in doing so, they had forgotten how to fight. Their weapons were designed for precision strikes against primitive threats. Their tactics were based on overwhelming technological superiority against civilizations that couldn't fight back. Their soldiers were trained for occupation and uplift duties, not warfare against an enemy that adapted and evolved. "What are our options?" The Emperor asked. Fleet Admiral Corrin manipulated the display, showing their current military assets. "We have 12,000 ships across the galaxy, armed with the most advanced technology known to civilization. Our quantum disruptors can shatter planets. Our gravitational weaponry can collapse stars. Against any conventional threat, we would be unstoppable. But the Void Swarm isn't conventional, my lord. Historical records show they adapt to any weapon used against them. Energy weapons make them stronger. Kinetic weapons pass through them. Gravitational effects seem to feed their movement. They're not just alive. They're learning." Emperor Zephyros felt the weight of 7,000 years of peaceful existence pressing down on him. The Celestial Empire had achieved everything. They had dreamed of a galaxy without war, without suffering, without the chaos that marked primitive civilizations. But now, faced with an enemy that threatened all life, their greatest achievement had become their greatest weakness. "What about our allies?" he asked desperately. "The few remaining military powers are too distant to help in time, Chancellor." Rex reported. "The hegemony is 3 months away, even at maximum speed. The Confederation has already begun evacuation protocols for their outer worlds." "My lord, we may be facing this alone." The silence that followed was broken by an unexpected voice. Admiral Lyra stepped forward, her crystalline form pulsing with nervous energy. "My lord, there might be another option." Every eye in the chamber turned to her. "Speak." "The humans, my lord. What we've observed about their species suggests they might possess something we've lost." Admiral Corrin scoffed. "They can barely travel between planets. What could they possibly offer against a threat like this?" "They know how to fight impossible odds," Lyra replied. "More than that, they know how to win against impossible odds. Every day of their existence has been a battle against their own world, and they've never lost. They don't just survive. They find ways to turn disadvantage into advantage." "You're suggesting we ask primitives to help us fight the greatest threat the galaxy has ever known?" Chancellor Vex asked incredulously. "I'm suggesting we ask the only species we've encountered that treats impossible challenges as normal life," Lyra countered. "My lord, we've spent millennia trying to understand what makes civilizations truly advanced. We've measured technology, philosophy, artistic achievement. But we never considered that maybe the greatest advancement is the simple refusal to give up." Emperor Zephyros considered her words. Everything about human civilization challenged celestial assumptions about progress and evolution. They were violent yet compassionate, primitive yet innovative, chaotic yet capable of perfect coordination when faced with crisis. "What exactly are you proposing?" he asked. "Full diplomatic contact. Share our technology with them. Explain the threat. And ask for their help, not as subjects to be uplifted, but as equals in a fight for survival." The suggestion caused an uproar among the council. The idea of treating a primitive species as equals violated every principle of celestial civilization. But as the debate raged, the holographic display continued to show the inexorable advance of the void swarm toward the core worlds. Finally, the Emperor raised his hand for silence. Admiral Lyra, you will lead a diplomatic mission to Earth. You have 48 hours to secure their cooperation. If they refuse, or if their help proves insufficient, we will implement full evacuation protocols for the core systems. And if they agree, then we pray that their primitive instincts are worth more than our advanced civilization. The journey to Earth took 18 hours at maximum speed. During the flight, Admiral Lyra prepared for what might be the most important diplomatic mission in galactic history. When they arrived in Earth's solar system, they found something that surprised even her, a human welcoming committee. 3 primitive spacecraft had launched from Earth to meet them, moving in perfect formation despite their obviously inferior technology. The lead ship transmitted a message in perfect celestial. Welcome to the Sol System, Admiral Lyra. We've been expecting you. The human delegation was led by Secretary General Maria Santos of the United Nations in general, David Park of the newly formed Earth Defense Force. They met aboard the celestial flagship, their primitive environmental suits, contrasting sharply with the crystalline perfection of the ship's architecture. You know why we're here? Admiral Lyra said without preamble. You're facing an enemy you can't defeat with conventional methods, Secretary General Santos replied. We've been monitoring your communications and long-range sensors for the past week. This void swarm is unlike anything you've encountered before. Admiral Lyra blinked in surprise. You've been monitoring our communications? General Park smiled grimly. Admiral, we've been watching your ships for months. Your technology is impressive, but your operational security is terrible. You broadcast on frequencies that a first-year engineering student could intercept. That single quotes ... impossible. Our communication. Systems are quantum encrypted. They are, Santos agreed. But you're using them to communicate with each other across your entire fleet simultaneously. The encryption is perfect, but the pattern of the communications tells us everything we need to know about your command structure, your capabilities, and your current crisis. Admiral Lyra felt a chill of recognition. These humans had not only detected their presence, but had been conducting intelligence operations against them. Without advanced technology, using nothing but observation and analysis, they had gained a complete understanding of celestial military operations. Why are you telling us this? She asked. Because we want to help, Santos replied simply. We've seen what happens when civilizations fall. We've studied the historical records of the species that tried to fight the Void Swarm before. They all made the same mistake, which was... General Park leaned forward. They tried to fight it like a conventional enemy. Energy weapons, kinetic bombardment, gravitational manipulation, all the tools of advanced civilization. But the swarm isn't technology, it's evolution in its purest form. It learns, adapts, and overcomes any direct threat. Then, how do you propose to fight it? The 2 humans exchanged glances. We don't fight it, Santos said. We make it fight itself. Over the next 6 hours, the humans outlined a strategy that was both brilliant and terrifying in its simplicity. Instead of engaging the Void Swarm directly, they would use its own adaptive nature against it by introducing carefully designed conflicts within the swarm itself. They could force it to evolve in contradictory directions until it collapsed under the weight of its own mutations. The key is unpredictability, General Park explained. Every time it adapts to one strategy, we switch to something completely different, keep it evolving so fast that it can't stabilize. But that would require perfect coordination across thousands of ships, Admiral Lyra protested. The timing would have to be exact to the microsecond. Yes, Santos agreed. Which is why we're going to need your technology and our tactical expertise. Your ships have the capability to execute complex maneuvers. Our people have the experience to improvise when those maneuvers inevitably fail. The plan was audacious, beyond anything the Celestial Empire had ever attempted. It required abandoning every principle of military doctrine in favor of creative chaos. Ships would have to act independently while somehow maintaining perfect coordination. Technology would have to be used in ways it was never designed for. Most critically, it required accepting that failure was not only possible, but probable, and being prepared to adapt instantly to new circumstances. In other words, it required thinking like a human. The final battle took place in the Kepler system, chosen because its unique configuration of planets and asteroid fields would provide maximum opportunities for unpredictable tactics. The combined fleet numbered over 15,000 ships, every vessel the Celestial Empire could muster, crewed by humans and Celestials working together. Admiral Lyra stood on the bridge of her flagship, watching as human tactical officers worked alongside Celestial crew members. The humans had adapted to the advanced technology with frightening speed, while the Celestials had struggled to understand the seemingly chaotic human battle plans. Swarm contact in 30 seconds. The tactical officer reported, "All ships implement Chaos Protocol Alpha." General Park commanded from his position at the tactical. What followed was less a battle than a dance of pure insanity. Ships engaged the Void Swarm with every conventional weapon available, then immediately switched to completely different attack patterns. Gravitational mines were used not to destroy the enemy, but to force it into specific formations. Energy weapons were fired not at the swarm, but at space debris, creating unpredictable projectile paths. Every time the Void Swarm began to adapt to one strategy, the humans would order a complete tactical shift. Ships that had been attacking suddenly began retreating in apparently random directions. Weapons that had been firing continuously went silent without warning. The entire battle plan seemed to be falling apart, but Admiral Lyra began to see the pattern beneath the chaos. The humans weren't losing control, they were maintaining it by constantly changing what control meant. The Void Swarm, designed to learn and overcome any consistent threat, found itself facing an enemy that refused to be consistent. "It's working," the science officer reported in amazement. "The swarm is beginning to show signs of internal conflict. Different sections are evolving different adaptations." The final phase of the battle was the most terrifying, as the Void Swarm began to collapse under the weight of its contradictory evolution. It made one last desperate attempt to survive. Abandoning its distributed form, it condensed into a single massive entity that dwarfed even the largest celestial ships. "Now," General Park commanded. Every ship in the fleet fired simultaneously, not at the condensed swarm, but at the space around it. The combined gravitational effects created a temporary black hole that lasted just long enough to trap the entity. As it was pulled into the artificial singularity, the Void Swarm let out a psychic scream that was felt across the galaxy. Then it was gone. In the aftermath, as the fleet regrouped and began damage assessment, Admiral Lyra found herself standing beside Secretary General Santos on the observation deck of human command ship. "How did you know it would work?" she asked. Santos smiled, looking out at the stars that were safe once again. "We didn't. That's the point. We never know if our plans will work. We just know that giving up isn't an option." "But the risk, Admiral. We've been taking impossible risks our entire existence. Every time we faced a challenge that should have destroyed us, we found a way to turn it into an opportunity. That's not advanced technology or superior evolution. That's just who we are." As the human ships began their journey back to Earth, Admiral Lyra transmitted her final report to Emperor Zephyros. The message was simple but profound. "The humans have taught us something we had forgotten, my lord. True strength isn't the absence of struggle, it's the refusal to surrender to it." The Celestial Empire still ruled the galaxy, but they no longer ruled alone. Humanity had earned its place not through technological advancement or philosophical enlightenment, but through something far more fundamental: the unbreakable spirit that turns every challenge into a chance to prove that giving up is never an option. In the end, the galaxy was saved not by the most advanced civilization it had ever known, but by the one species that had never learned how to quit. The Celestial Empire established permanent diplomatic relations with Earth, not as benefactors, guiding a primitive world, but as allies learning from each other. Human tactical academies were established on celestial worlds, while Earth received technology that would accelerate their development by millennia. But perhaps the most important change was philosophical. The Celestials began to understand that perfection wasn't the absence of struggle, it was the ability to find meaning and growth within that struggle. They started introducing controlled challenges into their society, not to cause suffering, but to rediscover the strength that comes from overcoming adversity. Meanwhile, humanity looked up at the stars with new understanding. They were no longer alone in the universe, but they were still unique. Their gift wasn't superior technology or ancient wisdom. It was the simple, stubborn refusal to accept that any problem was unsolvable, any challenge insurmountable, any cause truly lost. Years later, when other threats emerged from the dark spaces between galaxies, they were met not by a single empire imposing order through superior force, but by an alliance that had learned to combine advanced technology with human determination. The galaxy had found its protectors, and they came not from the most peaceful worlds, but from the one planet that had never known peace, and had never stopped fighting for something better. Earth had taught the galaxy that sometimes the greatest strength comes not from avoiding the storm, but from learning to dance in the rain. The void swarm had been defeated. But more importantly, the galaxy had rediscovered something it had lost in its pursuit of perfection. The unbreakable spirit that turned every ending into a new beginning, every defeat into a lesson, and every challenge into a chance to prove that hope. Determination and the refusal to surrender can overcome any darkness in the vast expanse of space. Among civilizations that had mastered the laws of physics and transcended the limitations of matter, it was the humans, loud, chaotic, impossible humans, who had reminded everyone what it truly meant to be alive. The galaxy was safe, not because its most advanced children had learned to avoid danger, but because its youngest had learned to face it with a smile and ask. The end.